The rain drummed against the corroded metal of Lena's safehouse roof, dripping onto the flickering holographic display of her burner terminal. The message burned across the screen in angry, jagged text. They stole it, all of it. The code, the assets, the fucking soul of my game. Arasaka's innovative new release? It's mine, and I want it back. You're the only one who can slip in and out without them knowing. Payment? Double your rate, but I don't have much time. They're shipping the final build to their service tonight. The sender ID flashed. Dale Crine. Lena remembered her. The indie dev with wild hair, wilder ideas, and a habit of buying Lena drinks she didn't want. Brilliant. Stubborn. Too idealistic for a city like Detroit. Lena leaned back in her chair, tanto knife twirling between her fingers. She didn't do favors. But Arasaka? Stealing from someone who couldn't fight back? That pissed her off. She tapped the terminal, pulling up the building schematics of Arasaka's Detroit branch. Not their main tower, just a server farm, tucked away like a secret. Close enough to hurt. "All right, Dale," she muttered, smirking. "Let's ruin their night." Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, a sprawl of stolen schematics and grainy surveillance feeds projected above her burner terminal. The holographic blueprints of the Arasaka Detroit branch's secondary server farm floated in the air, pulsing faintly with the rhythm of her neural interface. She'd been at it for 12 hours straight, her fingers twitching with the after effects of too many stim patches. "All right, you corporate fucks. Let's see how you tick." She pulled up the building's exterior layout first, a squat, reinforced concrete structure tucked between a derelict noodle shop and a boarded-up cyber clinic, deliberately unremarkable. No flashy neon, no corporate logos, just a single unmarked door and a service entrance in the back. Good. They want to hide it. That meant they were ashamed of it. And ashamed things had weak points. She zoomed in on the service entrance. No guards posted outside, amateur, but the door itself was a different story. Thick alloy, hydraulic locks, and if she had to guess, a pressure-sensitive alarm system wired into the frame. She tapped her chin, then made a note in the margin of her data pad. Front door's a no-go. Roof access? Her fingers danced over the terminal, pulling up satellite imagery. The roof was a jungle of ventilation shafts and maintenance hatches, all of it bristling with motion sensors. Expected. She traced a path from the alley behind the building to a rusted fire escape, then to a skylight that looked like it hadn't been opened in a decade. Possible, but she'd need to check the structural integrity. Nothing worse than dropping into a nest of trigger-happy augments because the glass couldn't hold her weight. She swiped to the next file. Guard rotations. The footage was 3 days old, but patterns didn't change overnight. 2 guards on the main floor, one at the service entrance, one patrolling the hallways. Both cyber-augmented, of course, but not the high-end stuff. Mid-tier reflex boosters, subdermal plating on the forearms and ribs, and from the way they moved, neural links that fed them tactical data in real time. Annoying, but not impossible. Lena slowed the playback, watching the way the first guard, tall guy she dubbed him, moved. His steps were too precise, his turns too sharp. Military training, probably ex-Arasaka security. The other one, Twitch, kept adjusting his grip on his smart gun like he was nervous. Rookie. That was useful. She timed their rounds, 7 minutes 43 seconds from the front door to the back, then another 8 minutes to loop around to the server room. Sloppy. They were supposed to overlap, but tall guy always paused to check his wrist display when he hit the midpoint, buying Twitch an extra 20 seconds. There, a gap. Not much, but enough. Now for the fun part. She pulled up the security specs. Laser grids in the hallways, pressure pads near the doors, and biometric locks on everything that mattered. Standard stuff. But then there was it. The watchdog AI, codenamed Cerberus 7. She'd heard rumors about Arasaka's new pet project, a predictive security system that learned from intrusions. Great. Just what I needed. She cracked her neck and dove in.
Cerberus 7 was a bitch. According to the leaked specs, courtesy of a very drunk and very dead Arasaka tech, the AI didn't just monitor feeds, it analyzed them, learned normal patterns, flagged anomalies, and could even predict intruder behavior based on past breaches. It was tied into the motion sensors, the laser grids, the biometric locks, everything. And worst of all, it had a direct line to Arasaka's central security hub. If it caught me, I wasn't just dealing with local rent-a-cops, I was dealing with a swarm. But every system had a flaw. Lena pulled up the AI's logs from the last 6 months. Most of the alerts were false positives: janitors, maintenance drones, a rat that had somehow triggered 3 separate sensors. Idiots. They'd never bothered to fine-tune it. She grinned. Lazy. She cross-referenced the false alerts with the guard rotations. Every time the system flagged something, the guards checked it out. And every time, it took them exactly 3 minutes to reset the alarms and get back on patrol. 3 minutes. That was her window. But she'd need more. She dug deeper, pulling up the AI's core directives. Protect the servers, minimize false positives, and prioritize human life. Prioritize human life. That meant it would hesitate before locking down the building if it thought civilians were inside. And that meant if she could trick it into thinking she was one of them, her terminal pinged. A new file, labeled Maintenance Protocols. Jackpot. The maintenance logs were a gold mine. Cerberus 7 had a blind spot, the weekly system reboots. For exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds, the AI was offline, running diagnostics. The guards used that time to grab coffee, take piss breaks, or, if Tall Guy's records were accurate, sneak a smoke out back. She checked the timestamp, 02:43 a.m. Perfect. But she still needed a way past the biometrics. The server room door required a palm print and a retinal scan. She could fake the print. Dale's stolen access card had a decent forgery, but the retinal scan was trickier. Unless... She pulled up the personnel files. Twitch had a record of eye injuries from a bar fight 2 years ago. His left eye was synthetic, and synthetic eyes, Lena knew, could be hacked. She made another note. Twitch's left eye. Exploit? Now for the physical security. The laser grids were standard issue, but the motion trackers were a problem. They weren't just heat sensitive, they measured air displacement. A thermoptic cloak would hide her from the cameras, but if she moved too fast, they'd set them off anyway. Slow and steady then, like she was one of the maintenance drones. And the biometric locks? They weren't just scanning for authorized personnel, they were scanning for augmentations. Specifically, the subdermal chips Arasaka planted in all its employees. Shit. She didn't have time to get chipped. And even if she did, the system would flag her as an unknown. Unless she had a chip it recognized. She pulled up the employee database. There, Mara Kowalski, a low-level IT tech who'd quit last month. No flags on her file, no records of termination. Just gone. Disappeared, more like. Arasaka had a habit of making problems vanish. But if Mira was still in the system, her terminal fingers flew over the keyboard, spoofing a request for Mira's personnel file. The photo that popped up showed a tired-looking woman in her late 20s, her Arasaka ID badge clipped to her lab coat. Sorry, Mira, but you're about to do me a favor. She copied the chip's signature code and slotted it into a data spike. One problem down. The vent system was her best bet. She pulled up the building's blueprints again, tracing the ducts from the roof to the server room. There was a junction above the main hallway, right above the gap in the guard rotations. If she timed it right, she could drop in, disable the local sensors, and be in the server room before Cerberus 7 even knew she was there. But she needed to know exactly where the guards would be when she made her move. She queued up the surveillance footage from the last reboot. Tall Guy was in the break room. Twitch was leaning against the wall outside the server room, distracted. Good. But then, what the hell?
At 2:45:12, Twitch's head snapped up. He stared down the hallway for a full 10 seconds before shaking his head and going back to his display. "What did you see, rookie?" She rewound, enhanced the footage. There, just for a second, a flicker of movement in the shadows near the server door. Too fast to be human. A glitch? Or something else? Lena's stomach twisted. Another intruder? She cross-referenced the timestamp with the security logs. No alerts, no breaches, nothing. So why did you look, Twitch? She zoomed in, adjusted the contrast. There, barely visible, a smudge on the lens, like someone had wiped it with a dirty finger. Someone's been here before. Lena leaned back, rubbing her eyes. Great. She wasn't just breaking into a corporate server farm. She was breaking into a corporate server farm someone else had already scouted. Fine. If someone had beaten her to it, they left a trail, and trails were useful. She pulled up the logs for the night in question. No breaches, no alarms, but the system had flagged an anomaly. A 0.3-second delay in the motion sensors near the server door. Just long enough for someone to slip past. Who the hell are you? She didn't have time to find out, but she could use it. If someone had already probed Arasaka's defenses, they'd have left something behind. A back door, a blind spot, a weakness Cerberus 7 hadn't patched yet. And if she could find it... Her terminal beeped. A new message from Dale. "You find anything yet?" "I'm working." "The clock's ticking. They're moving the code tonight." "I know," she snapped. Then softer. "I'll have a plan by sundown." She killed the comms before he could reply. The weak point was in the walls. Lena had been so focused on the doors and the vents, she'd almost missed it. But there, on the blueprints, a maintenance hatch in the server room, hidden behind a false panel. It wasn't on the security feeds, it wasn't on the guard rounds, it was just there. Because they don't know it's there. She pulled up the building's construction records. The hatch had been sealed off during a renovation 5 years ago, but the blueprints had never been updated. Lazy bastards. She could get in through the hatch, bypass the biometrics entirely, and... No. Cerberus 7 would still see her. The motion sensors are everywhere. Unless she gave it something else to look at. She pulled up the specs for the micro-drone she'd lifted from a black market dealer in the flats. It was small, fast, and most importantly, could spoof a human heat signature. If she sent it on a loop through the main hallway, the AI would focus on it while she slipped in through the hatch. Perfect. But she still needed to disable the local alarms. She pulled up the wiring schematics. The motion sensors in the server room were on a separate circuit from the main grid. If she could cut the power just to that circuit. Her eyes landed on the emergency lighting panel. Bingo! One well-placed EMP pulse, and the server room would go dark. Cerberus 7 would scramble to reroute power, giving her just enough time to... Shit! The biometric locks had a manual override. In case of a system failure, the guards could open them with a physical key. Where the hell do they keep the keys? Tall guy. Of course it was Tall Guy. She pulled up his personnel file again. Former military, 5 years with Arasaka Security, and there, a commendation for quick thinking during a system blackout. She zoomed in on the photo attached to the file. A key ring on his belt. One of the keys was old, brassed, worn. Not Arasaka issue. You've got a skeleton key, don't you, Tall Guy? She made a note. Disarm Tall Guy first. Take his keys. Now for the timing. Lena synced all the data. Guard rotations, Cerberus 7's reboot window, the drone's loop, the EMP pulse, and mapped it out on a timeline. 02:4300, AI reboots. 02:4310, guards start their break. 02:4330, drone activates, drawing Cerberus 7's attention. 02:4400, EMP pulse. 02:4515, she's through the hatch. 02:4530, she's out, with the drive in her pocket. Tight, but doable. She leaned back, stretching her arms over her head. Almost there. Just one more thing. Lena pulled up the personnel files again, this time looking for weaknesses. Tall guy was ex-military, but twitch. Ah, there it was. A note in his medical records, severe allergies to synthetic pollen. Arasaka's flower delivery guy must have been a real asshole. She smiled, just in case. The final prep was always the worst. Lena laid out her gear on the table. The thermo-optic cloak, the EMP pulse, the data spike with Mira's chip signature, the micro-drone, a vial of synthetic pollen. She checked her knives, sharp, her magnetic grips, secure, her boots, silent. Then she pulled up the footage one last time. Twitch, scratching at his wrist. Tall guy adjusting his gun belt. The flicker in the shadows. Whoever you are, she thought, thanks for the help. She queued up the building's power grid schematics. The emergency lighting was tied to a backup generator in the basement. As she stepped into the rain-slicked alleys, she lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. All right, Arasaka, let's dance. The streets of Detroit were slick with rain and neon, the air thick with the hum of hover traffic and the acrid tang of ozone from the factory district. Lena moved through the shadows like a blade unsheathed, silent, precise, already tasting blood. She stuck to the back alleys, where the glow of flickering holograph ads barely reached, and the potholes were deep enough to swallow a man. Her boots made no sound on the cracked pavement. Good. Silence is the first rule. The Arasaka server farm was 8 blocks away. She adjusted the strap of her bag, feeling the weight of her gear, the thermo-optic cloak folded tight, the EMP pulse tucked into an inner pocket, the micro-drone secured in its case. Her tanto knives were sheathed at her wrists, their neurotoxin-coated edges hidden beneath the cuffs of her armored jacket. Second rule, always be ready. Lena exhaled, watching her breath mist in the cold air. Focus. She ran through the plan again, step by step, like she had 100 times in her safe house. Phase 1, entry. Roof access via the fire escape on the north side. The skylight above the maintenance hatch was old, the seals weakened by years of neglect. She had checked the structural integrity from satellite imagery. It would hold her weight, assuming Arasaka hasn't reinforced it since the last scan. Phase 2, the drop. Once inside, she'd follow the ventilation shaft to the junction above the main hallway. The guards would be on their break, Cerberus 7 would be rebooting, and the motion sensors would be blind for exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. 3 minutes to get to the server room, 17 seconds to disable the local alarms. Phase 3, the heist. EMP pulse to kill the lights, data spike to bypass the biometric lock, the drive in her pocket, before the guards knew she was there. Phase 4, exit. Same way she came in. No traces, no witnesses. A rat scuttled past her feet, disappearing into a storm drain. Lena didn't flinch. Third rule, expect the unexpected. She turned onto Jefferson Avenue, where the neon signs of pawn shops and black market clinics flickered in the dark. A group of augmented street kids loitered outside a ramshackle net cafe, their cybernetic eyes glowing in the dim light. They didn't look at her. Smart kids. Lena ducked into the mouth of an alley, pressing her back against the brick wall. Ahead, the Arasaka building loomed, its unmarked facade indistinguishable from the decay around it. Perfect. The best hiding places are the ones no one notices. She pulled her hood up, obscuring her face, and reached into her bag. The micro-drone was small enough to fit in her palm, its tiny propellers whirring to life as she activated it. She sent it skimming ahead, a silent scout. The feed appeared on her neural display, a live stream of the street ahead, the building's exterior, the fire escape. Clear. Lena moved. She kept to the shadows, her steps timed with the rhythmic pulse of the city's power grid. Every few seconds the street lights flickered, just long enough for her to slip from one pool of darkness to the next. Fourth rule, use the environment. The fire escape was exactly where the schematic said it would be, rusted but sturdy. She tested the first rung with her gloved hand. No alarms, no traps. Amateurs. She scaled the metal framework with practiced ease, her magnetic grips clicking softly against the rain-slicked iron. The drone hovered above her, its feed steady in her vision. No guards on the roof, no patrols. Good. At the top, she crouched, scanning the rooftop. The skylight was there, just as she'd seen in the blueprints, a square of grimy glass set into the tarred roof. She pulled out her lockpick gun and pressed it against the frame. A soft click as the hydraulic locks disengaged. Too easy. Lena hesitated. Something's off. She sent the drone in first, letting it dip beneath the skylight. The feed showed her the maintenance hatch, just as she had expected. But there was something else, a faint rhythmic thump that didn't belong. Footsteps. She froze. The drone's audio feed picked it up clearly now, the steady tread of boots on metal. Someone's up here. Lena cursed under her breath and pulled the drone back. She pressed herself flat against the roof, listening. The footsteps grew louder. A guard. No, two. Their voices were muffled, but she could make out the words. "I told you, man, the roof's secure. No one's stupid enough to come in this way." "Yeah, well, Captain Paranoid says we check it anyway. You know how it is after that breach last month." "Breach?" Lena's mind raced. There wasn't anything about a breach in the logs. The guards rounded the corner of the ventilation shaft, their flashlights cutting through the dark. Lena didn't breathe. The thermo-optic cloak was still in her bag. If they turned this way... "Wasted time," the first guard grumbled. "I'd rather be inside where it's dry." "Tell that to the captain," the second guard said, shining his light over the skylight. Lena's fingers twitched toward her knife. But the guards didn't stop. They kept walking, their boots clanging against the metal grating as they moved toward the opposite side of the roof. "And if we find nothing, we can finally get some damn coffee." The footsteps faded. Lena waited 30 seconds, then a full minute. The drone confirmed they were gone. Move. The skylight opened with a soft hiss of protesting hinges. Lena slipped inside, lowering herself silently onto the catwalk below. The air was thick with the hum of machinery, the scent of ozone and old wiring. She was in. The maintenance hatch was right where the blueprint said it would be, hidden behind a false panel. She pried it open with her fingers, wincing as the metal groaned. Too loud. She paused, listening. Nothing. She dropped into the ventilation shaft, pulling the hatch closed behind her. The darkness was absolute. She activated her neural interface's low-light mode, the world snapping into green-tinted clarity. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for her shoulders. She crawled forward, counting her breaths. 15 meters to the junction, then the drop. Her comms crackled. Once, twice. Static or a trap? No, she had jammed all local frequencies before she left the safe house. Paranoia is the 5th rule. Lena reached the junction, peered through the grate. Below her, the main hallway stretched out, bathed in the sterile blue glow of emergency lighting. The guards were gone. The coast was clear. Almost time. She checked her chrono. 0240. 3 minutes until the reboot. Lena pulled out the microdrone and sent it skimming down the hallway, setting it to loop between the break room and the server door. On her display, she watched as it flitted past the security cameras, a blur of motion just fast enough to catch Cerberus 7's attention. Distraction in place. Now for the hard part. The grate over the hallway was old, the screws loose. Lena worked them free with her fingers, then lowered herself down, hanging from her fingertips. The drop was 3 meters, nothing she couldn't handle. She landed in a crouch, her boots absorbing the impact. The hallway was empty. 0242. 1 minute until the reboot. Move. She stuck to the walls, her steps silent. The drone looped ahead of her, drawing the AI's focus. She could hear the distant murmur of voices from the break room. Tall guy and Twitch, right on schedule. 0243. The lights flickered. Cerberus 7 was rebooting. Lena didn't hesitate. She pulled the EMP pulse from her bag and pressed it against the server room's biometric lock. The device hummed softly in her hand. 3, 2, 1. She triggered it. The lights died. The hallway plunged into darkness. Alarms blared, their shrill wail echoing through the building. Lena didn't flinch. Right on time. She heard shouting from the break room. "What the hell?" followed by the sound of boots hitting the floor. Move. Lena sprinted for the server room door. The biometric lock was dark, its systems fried by the EMP. She pulled out her data spike and jammed it into the access panel. The device whirred to life, spoofing Mira's chip signature. "Come on, come on." The lock clicked. Yes.
The server room was cold, the air thick with the scent of burning circuitry. Lena slipped inside, pulling the door shut behind her. The emergency lights flickered back on, casting long shadows across the rows of humming servers. She was in. Lena didn't waste time. She knew exactly which server held Dale's code. 3rd row, 2nd unit from the left. She yanked open the panel and pulled the drive, shoving it into her pocket. Too easy. A sound behind her. Lena spun, knife drawn. Nothing. Just the hum of the servers, the distant shouts of the guards. She exhaled. Paranoia saves lives. But she wasn't done yet. Lena pulled out her 2nd data spike and jammed it into the main terminal. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. A few keystrokes and the system was hers. She queued up the white protocol, every trace of Dale's code scrubbed from Arasaka's servers. Let them try to steal it again. The terminal beeped. Process complete. Lena smirked. Bonus. Now for the door burst open. Twitch stood there with his smart gun leveled at her chest, his cybernetic eye glowing red in the dark. Freeze! Lena didn't freeze. She moved. Twitch fired. The shot went wide as Lena dove behind a server rack, rolling to her feet in one fluid motion. She heard tall guy shouting behind him, "What the?" But she didn't have time to worry about him. Twitch was already advancing, his finger tight on the trigger. "You're dead, bitch." Lena lunged. She closed the distance in 2 steps, her knife flashing. Twitch tried to find her again, but she was already inside his guard, her blade pressing against the soft skin beneath his jaw. "Drop it," she hissed. Twitch hesitated. Lena pressed harder. A bead of blood welled where the knife met his skin. Now. The gun clattered to the floor. Good boy. Then she kneed him in the gut. Twitch doubled over, gasping. Lena brought the hilt of her knife down on the back of his neck. He crumpled. 1 down. She turned just as tall guy charged through the door, his mono katana drawn. "You're gonna regret that." Lena grinned. "No, I'm not." She met his strike with her own knife, steel clashing in the dim light. Tall guy was fast, military fast, but Lena was faster. She feinted left, then twisted, her blade slicing across his forearm. He hissed in pain but didn't stop. "You're gonna pay for this." "Already did," Lena said, and kicked the server rack behind her. It toppled onto tall guy with a crash of metal and sparks. He went down hard, his sword clattering across the floor. Lena didn't wait to see if he got up. She was already moving, sprinting for the ventilation shaft. Behind her, the alarms wailed, the guards shouted, but none of it mattered. She was out the hatch, up the shaft, and back onto the roof in 30 seconds flat. The skylight was still open. Lena didn't bother closing it. She dropped onto the fire escape, then the alley below. The rain had stopped. The streets were quiet. Lena lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly, watching the Arasaka building as red alarms flashed against the neon skyline. Job done. She turned and walked away. The rusty nails smelled like fried circuits and bad decisions. Lena pushed through the door, the hinges groaning in protest. The dim glow of flickering neon signs cast long shadows across the sticky floor, and the hum of a busted jukebox played some forgotten synth-punk track on loop. The regulars, augmented mercenaries, washed-up netrunners, and a few corporate defectors nursing their regrets didn't even glance up as she walked in. Good. She wasn't here to be seen. Dale was hunched over a corner booth, his fingers flying across the keyboard of a battered laptop. His dark hair was a mess, his eyes bloodshot from too many hours staring at a screen. A half-empty glass of synth whiskey sat beside him, untouched. Typical. Lena slid into the booth across from him and tossed the stolen drive on the table. It clattered against his glass, making him jump. Jesus! Dale's hands flew up, nearly knocking over his drink. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Relax, Lena said, leaning back. I brought your present. Dale stared at the drive like it was a live grenade. Then slowly he reached for it, his fingers trembling. You actually did it! I told you I would. She lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke into the stale air. Now we've got a problem. Dale's face fell. What kind of problem? The kind where Arasaka knows someone stole their shiny new game and they're going to start looking for who benefits the most from its sudden disappearance. She tapped the drive with her fingernail. That'd be you. Dale paled. Shit. Yeah, like a cigarette. They don't know it was me, but they will know it was you who had the motive and the skills and the very public grudge against them. Dale swallowed hard. What do I do? You get your story straight. Lena leaned forward, her voice low. Because when they come knocking, and they will come knocking, you'd better have a damn good alibi. Dale rubbed his temples. I don't have an alibi. I've been here all night working on... Exactly, Lena cut him off. You've been here, alone, with no witnesses. Bad move. I didn't think. No, you didn't. Lena stubbed out her cigarette. Lucky for you, I do think. Here's what you're going to tell them. She pulled a burner chip from her pocket and slid it across the table. You're not a thief. You're a victim. Dale frowned. What?
Arasaka's been cracking down on indie devs, right? Shutting down projects, buying up patents, strong-arming small studios? Yeah, but nothing. Lena's eyes glinted. You're gonna say you got a tip from an anonymous hacker group, Red Circuit maybe, or Neon Dawn, that Arasaka was about to wipe your game from existence. So you backed up your code, for safekeeping. Dale blinked. That's actually not a bad idea. Of course it's not. Because it's true. It is? Close enough. She pulled up a news feed on a wrist display and slid it toward him. The headline read, Activist hackers target Arasaka in wave of digital sabotage. Red Circuit hit 3 of their servers last week. Security's been tight ever since. You're just another casualty in their little war. Dale's eyes flipped over the article. So I tell them I was afraid they'd delete my work? So I made a copy? Not just a copy, Lena tapped the drive, a leak. You were going to release it to the public, expose their theft, force them to back off. Dale's fingers twitched toward the drive. That's actually not a bad idea. Of course it's not, because it's true. It is? Close enough. She pulled up a news feed on her wrist display and slid it toward him. The headline read, Activist hackers target Arasaka in wave of digital sabotage. Red Circuit hit 3 of their servers last week. Security's been tight ever since. You're just another casualty in their little war. Dale's eyes flicked over the article. So I tell them I was afraid they'd delete my work, so I made a copy. Not just a copy, Lena tapped the drive, a leak. You were going to release it to the public, expose their theft, force them to back off. Dale's fingers twitched toward the drive. That's actually brilliant. I know. Lena lit another cigarette. But here's the catch. You didn't do it. You were about to, but you got cold feet. You were here, drowning your nerves in whiskey when the breach happened. You had nothing to do with it. And if they ask why I have the code? Because you backed it up before they could destroy it. You were protecting your work, not stealing theirs. Dale exhaled slowly. That might actually work. It will work, corrected Lena, because you're going to sell it. Dale's head snapped up. Sell it? Not the game, Lena rolled her eyes. The story. You're an indie dev standing up to the bad Corp. The media will eat it up. You want me to go public? Dale's voice cracked. Not yet, Lena shook her head. First, you leak just enough to the right people. A few screenshots, a demo, get the net buzzing. Then, when Arasaka comes snooping, you act shocked. Oh no, someone stole my backup. How convenient for them. Dale's fingers drummed against the table. And if they don't buy it? Then you play the martyr. Lena's smile was sharp. I was just trying to save my life's work. Arasaka's been threatening me for months. Cue the tears. Works every time. You're serious. Deadly. Lena leaned back. You got the skills, the reputation, and the motive to be a target. Use it. Dale stared at the drive, then at her. What if they don't believe me? Then you run. Lena's voice was flat. But if you do this right, you won't have to. A silence settled between them, broken only by the jukebox's distorted music. What about you? Dale asked finally. Aren't you worried they'll come after you? They don't know it was me, and if they do figure it out, she shrugged. I'm a ghost. You're the one with a face. Dale didn't look reassured. Relax, Lena said, nudging the drive toward him. You've got the code, you've got the story, and you've got me making sure they never trace it back to either one of us. Why? Dale's voice was quiet. Why help me? Lena studied him for a long moment. Then she picked up her cigarette and took a slow drag. Because I hate Arasaka more than you do. Dale exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Okay, I can do this. Good. Lena pulled out a second chip, a clean one, and slid it across the table. Here's your insurance policy. What's this? A little gift from Red Circuit, Lena smirked. Fake comms logs, fake threats, fake everything. Proves Arasaka's been harassing you for weeks. Dale took the chip, turning it over in his fingers. You made this? I borrowed it. Lena's grin was all teeth. From a very real hacker collective who's going to be very pissed when they find out someone's using their name. Won't they come after me? Not if you play it right. Lena tapped the table. You're a victim, remember? They'll sympathize, might even offer to help you hide the code. Dale's eyes widened. That's actually brilliant. I know. Lena finished her cigarette and crushed it into the ashtray. Now here's what you do next. She pulled out a data pad and started writing. First, you contact 3 people. A journalist at Neon Mirror, she owes me a favor. A netrunner named Kite, he'll spread the word in the right circles. And a lawyer, not a corporate one, someone who hates Arasaka as much as you do. Dale scribbled down the names. Then what? Then you wait. Lena's voice was low. Let the story build. Let Arasaka think they've got you cornered. And when they come for you, I leak the truth. Exactly. Lena stood, tossing a few cred chips onto the table. Drinks on me. Try not to screw this up. Dale caught her wrist. Lena, thank you. She looked down at his hand, then back at her. Don't thank me yet. Why not? Because Arasaka always retaliates. She pulled her arm free. And when they do, you'd better be ready. Dale's grip tightened on the drive. What do I do if they do come after me? You disappear. Lena's voice was cold. Change your handle, change your face, get out at Detroit. And if I can't? Then you make them regret it. Lena's eyes were hard. You've got the code, you've got the proof, use it. Dale swallowed. What if they hurt me? Lena paused. Then slowly she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, flat case. She slid it across the table. Dale opened it. Inside was a neurotoxin-laced monofilament wire, coiled neatly. What's this for? Insurance. Lena's voice was quiet. If they corner you, you tag one of them. Just a scratch. Enough to make them think before they come back. Dale's breath hitched. You're serious. I don't joke about survival. Lena's gaze didn't waver. You want to live? You fight. Dale closed the case with a snap. I'll remember that. See that you do. Lena turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. What? If they do catch you. She looked back at him, her expression unreadable. You don't know me. I understand. Good. Lena adjusted her gloves. Now get to work. She walked out without looking back. The door of the Rusty Nail swung shut behind her, leaving Dale alone with his whiskey, his laptop, and the weight of what he'd just agreed to. He stared at the drive, then at the burner chip, then at the wire. This is really happening. He took a deep breath and plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen flickered to life, his game's code scrolling past in a blur of text. For the first time in months, he smiled. Then he pulled out his comm and started typing.